militias this evening. I'm also going to be, I've already started the Twitter Spaces. Um, Find me on Twitter at Uncle Jonathan TV. And I would like, really, obviously we try to build the audience here on Rumble, but you're more than welcome to follow along on Spaces. Hopefully I talk loud enough to where this can be heard on Spaces. But I think I'm going to limit this to about an hour tonight. I have other things I want to get around to, but the goal is here to broadcast Monday through Friday on the sixes. I might be a little bit better at that Monday through Thursday. It's Friday evenings, kind of get a little busy, but I'm going to try to give you guys the same kind of content that I look for and the same type of things I want to discuss. We got to be honest, mass media is failing. They have failed us a long time and now it's collapsing. So things are not going to get talked about publicly unless we do it ourselves. I'm not doing this because I have a need to be adored, to have attention. As a matter of fact, I'm a little scared to death of getting this attention. But I feel that I can no longer sit on the sidelines and not put these things out there. There's great people already ahead of me. They're doing great work. Alex Jones, Dan Bongino, and Tim Pool is a guy that I think is very unique, very smart. And his broadcast is going to start here in an hour, and I'd encourage you to watch him. He has excellent guests. He has an excellent panel of younger people. Really get you some different perspectives. I would say if you're Gen X and older, man, tune in to Tim Cass IRL at night. I mean, for me, it's replaced the evening news. A lot of times we had my McLaughlin group. We had, a little bit before my time, William F. Buckley. But we'd have these news shows that would come on the hour after the national news. Usually your local news would come on first, and the next hour was your national news. And then you'd have it in the evening around, 6:30, 7 o'clock. Now, as a kid, I would tune out. But as I got older, I really liked those shows because you usually have a panel in there, similar to what the Sunday morning talking head shows used to do, but on a nightly basis, digesting all the night's news. We don't have that anymore, and maybe that's a good thing. And so this is what we need. Excuse me. This is what we need to be doing. So we know that we're actually having conversations. We're actually paying attention to what's going on because we are about to live in a very, very crazy time. I'm 100% convinced of that. Let me just make sure my Twitter. Let me do something here on my phone. I want to make sure. All right. Thank you, Twitter, for letting me know it's only me. That's fine. We're okay with that. I'm just in here talking to myself. Let me do one thing here on my phone. I don't want it to just, I want to be able to see this. So if you don't mind, give me a few seconds here. Let me change my screen time out here. All right, that should help somewhat. All right, so if you guys want to, like I said, follow me on Twitter. I'll be posting notifications. Please hit the subscribe, like button, whatever we got here on Rumble. I am cross-posting these videos to YouTube, but I am not going to be a slave to YouTube. I'm here at Rumble to support free speech. This is the primary platform that I'm going to be using. I am just astounded. As much as I'm repulsed by the way YouTube and big media has acted over these last few years, I am just astounded by what Rumble has done, taking a step and giving people access to true platform here dedicated to free speech, which is what this is all about. And so with that, let's get into tonight's topic. And I'm going to get a little help from a little friend of mine. Come here, Susie. This is Susie. Susie. Susie, look into the camera to all our viewers. Are you a militia member? Have you practiced with deadly weapons with 3 or more people? Hmm? Do you have plans to overthrow the government? All right. You're free. All right, so one who doesn't like a cute dog. Hopefully I'll make a great thumbnail. But what I want to talk about here is there is a bill, and this bill is to make it a federal crime to be a part of a militia or paramilitary activity, to engage in it. You don't have to hurt anybody. You don't have to have any plans to overthrow the government. All you have to do is have engaged in this activity as defined. Now, this bill follows similar state legislation that's been being passed in blue states, started in 2023 apparently. Vermont has passed a law. I think some other states, let me see here. Militia laws. Um, so there's been, well, I could find it when I wanted to. Vermont, I think Oregon has either tried or is trying. But several blue states have already passed some laws or are in the process of passing them. Now, I know there's laws on militias, what they can and can't do, but uh, nobody has really formally on a federal level passed a law that I'm aware of that has been this restrictive. Now, keep in mind, this is a law that's proposed. It's been filed by two Democrat senators. One of them is Senator Raskin. No, that's a congressman. Anyways, this bill was proposed in the Senate. My understanding is it is now in the House. No, I apologize. It was introduced in the House. Maybe these are dueling legislations because there was one in the House and there was one in the Senate. So let's just take a look at it as it stands. All right, and I'm sorry. My gosh. All right. The stream when I'm going over, I just realized the audio is not being captured. Let me fix that here. Hang on, give me 1 second. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Okay, great. You guys should be able to hear me now when I switch over from the camera to the display. I apologize for that. Um, this is the kinks. This is getting things live and getting things worked out. Okay, so this is the bill. This is the version of the bill that is in um, the that was introduced in the House. Senate preventing paramilitary following January 6th. Well, let's just look at this article here. This should answer our questions. Okay, this is a press release from Congressman Jamie Raskin, January 11th. Following the anniversary of January 6th attack on the Capitol, Congressman Jamie Raskin from Maryland's 8th District and Senator Edward Markey, Democrat, Massachusetts, introduced the Preventing Private Paramilitary Activity Act legislation that would create a federal prohibition on paramilitary groups through civil and criminal enforcement. The prohibition would hold individuals liable who directly engage in certain types of conduct, including intimidate state and local officials, interfering with government proceedings, pretending to be law enforcement, and violating people's constitutional rights while armed and acting as part of a private paramilitary organization. Well, what could be so wrong with that? There are currently no federal laws that address paramilitary activity or protect millions of Americans whose rights are threatened by this type of violent anti-democratic intimidation. Although all 50 states prohibit private paramilitary conduct, these laws are often far too outdated, under-enforced, or ignored. Private paramilitary organizations pose a threat not only to national security, but they also represent a public safety problem that extends beyond any single state. For example, private paramilitary actors like the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers traveled across state lines on January 6, patrolling neighborhoods, impeding law enforcement, storming the U.S. Capitol. Private paramilitary groups like the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, and the Proud Boys are using political violence to intimidate our people and threaten democratic government and the rule of law, said Congressman Raskin. Goes on and on and on. Specifically, the legislation will prevent publicly patrolling, drilling, notice there's no public word there, or engaging in harmful and deadly paramilitary techniques, interfering with or interrupting with government proceedings, interfering with the exercise of someone else's constitutional rights, falsely assuming the functions of law enforcement and asserting the authority over others, training to engage in such behavior. Well, okay, my sensibilities here are one, when these press releases are issued, right? They're always going to issue them so that what they're doing sounds completely reasonable. Obviously, the Patriot Act, the CARES Act, the No Child Left Behind Act, they short title these bills and they'll release these press releases solely for the intention to really kind of make you think that the bill is one thing when it really is another. Now I go back to, all these things listed. These things are already illegal. The bill acknowledges that in all 50 states that these things are illegal. Problem is, federal law enforcement cannot go and enforce state laws. So for example, if you commit murder, the FBI can assist the local authorities, and they often do, with, usually it's with some type of investigative services or some type of crime, CSI type stuff, right? They might have equipment that your local law enforcement might not have that might help them solve a crime. But you can't send an FBI agent to arrest somebody for a state crime. Murder is a state crime. Probably where you're at, I would assume all 50 states, murder is going to be a state crime. You have to be arrested by a state officer, your local policeman, a state deputy, highway patrolman, or state law enforcement, or your county law enforcement is going to make the arrest, and the charge is going to be filed in your state court. They can't send the FBI to actually physically arrest you unless you're actually there. They're there to charge you with a federal crime in the federal court system, which is a totally separate system than your state court systems. A lot of times we already have expanded federal crimes to a point where usually they can find something on you that is a federal crime. So let's say you, ordered I can't give you a real specific example, but I'll just say something like, you ordered a firearm component, you ordered a magazine or something like that, and you had it shipped from another state across state lines. Ooh, that opens the door. Now you ordered firearm material to commit a crime. These crimes are so that there's so many crimes now that really what you look at is you get charged for several things for one instance, for one act, which I personally think is unconstitutional. I think they should have to choose. But you'll see where somebody might get arrested for hacking into a computer system, right? And so that in itself is a crime, hacking into a computer. Then they'll say, like, and then there's another charge of using a computer to commit a crime. Or you see this on a state level, which I disagree with. They'll say somebody commits murder or commits armed robbery, and then they'll also charge them with using a firearm to commit a crime. Well, yeah, the firearm was also used in a murder. To me, it's ridiculous. I think it's a form of double jeopardy. That's my opinion. Obviously, the Supreme Court or other people have disagreed, but that's my opinion. I don't think you can sit there and charge people like stack the deck like that. Um, so there's already laws against all these things. Interfering with or interrupting government proceedings. Interfering with the exercise of somebody else's constitutional rights. Falsely assuming the function of law enforcement. That's impersonating a police officer. You get charged with that pretty quick. I don't care what state you're in. Or training to engage in such behavior. Now, this is where it really gets sticky. Training to engage in such behavior. That's where I have a problem. All right, CC Cleaner. Let's go to the actual bill here. Definitions. Ammunition. We know what that is. Armed services. Armed forces. We know what that is. Dangerous weapon. We know what that is. Explosive devices, firearms, large capacity ammunition feeding device. What's that defined as? A magazine, belt, drum, feed strip, anything that can hold more than 10 rounds. Well, this is an interesting way because we know they've been wanting for years to limit magazines to 10 rounds. So this is a nice little backdoor way. So there's some other things that are defined. We know what a person is. Private paramilitary organization. This is where I'd start paying attention. The term private paramilitary organization means any group of 3 or more persons associating under a command structure for the purpose of functioning in public or training to function in public as a combat support, law enforcement, or security services unit. Well, how in the world could this ever be abused by our federal government after what we've seen for the last few years? I could think of a million ways that this could be abused. You could have a bunch of 70-year-old men at a gardening club. I guarantee you, if the federal government doesn't like their politics, they will find a way to accuse them of being a private paramilitary organization. All you need is 3 people that the government accuses them of training to serve as combat support, law enforcement, or security services unit, which is ridiculous. Now, first of all, let me tell you, after 2020, after the riots, I was there. I was listening on the police scanners. And let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what happened. I'm getting a little upset here, but let me tell you what happened in the nicest neighborhood in Dallas, Texas, in Uptown. There was mobs of people rioting, destroying, screaming, kill Whitey, setting things on fire, attacking people, assaulting people, and I think we came this close to having somebody drug out of their home and murdered in the streets. And the police could not intervene because the mobs were too large and too violent. And at one point, I remember listening to this, and I wasn't the only one. There were others. I have friends. At one point, you could hear the what they tended to do, from my understanding, is they would follow the mob. At one point, I believe they estimated the mobs by the radio traffic to be about 1,200, and they would have unmarked, undercover, plainclothes officers. Because remember what it was like in 2020 when these riots were happening. If you're paying attention or seeing anything on Twitter or anything, if these folks saw a squad car, they were going to go over there and attack it. And the officer would be lucky to get out alive and unscathed. So they had undercover, unmarked, plainclothes officers stay back and observe. Which, I used to be a private investigator. I've done a lot of surveillance, and you'd be surprised in a hot situation like that. You can stay back far enough. You have binoculars, you have a video camera. Most people are focusing on what's happening 6 feet in front of them, not what's happening 100 yards back. So they're following this mob, trying to keep up with them, and homeowners are coming out with guns. I know a situation where they were trying to set a condo building on fire, and the residents were so scared, and one of the neighbors came out onto the 20-something floor of the balcony, let off a few rounds, and they all scattered. It worked. Probably kept the building from being on fire. And we're talking about a situation where the police couldn't get involved. Do you think the fire department was going to be able to put out a fire? They had just attacked 2 clerks in the store at the bottom of this tower and beaten them, and another one about 2 blocks away had been beaten and left for dead. There were calls for fire. They weren't able to get in there till 2 hours later. Not even the police. And by that time, the person had already been taken. I don't know if you know who he is. He's Machete Man is what I'm talking about. And he's kind of dropped off because I don't think he wanted the fame, which is understandable. But he's the guy that came out with the machete. He panicked and was scared. He shouldn't have ran out with a machete. It was a bad idea. But he was curb stomped, and most people thought he was dead. The way he was, and fortunately he did recover and he lived. Point being is that there are times in the middle of one of the largest cities in the nicest area of the country where obviously the police will not be there. And I'm not talking about, some type of extremist, militia groups that are, weird ideology, racist ideology, guys that are accelerationists, they're waiting on the great race war, even though I think they have a right, okay, to do what they want to do on their own property. As long as they have not committed a crime, I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. I think it's their constitutional right. I might not like it. I might think it's icky. But you know what? I'm not asking them what they think about my life choices and what I do in my free time either. And I think they have a constitutional right to do it. But that's not even what we're talking about here. Think about it in that situation that I give you. You and 2 other people decide that the police aren't coming. Nobody's going to put out a fire. And there's people out there screaming, "Kill Whitey," and trying to set your building on fire. And you and 2 other residents say, "Okay, here's what we need to do. You watch this side of the building with your shotgun. I watch this side of the building with my rifle. You go over there with your pistol and watch that side of the building." You're in violation of this law. That's what they're trying to outlaw, is your ability to form a group with 2 other people and defend yourselves. There's nothing in this legislation that says that in a time of riot or civil unrest that this law doesn't apply. That's what they want to do. So let's read on. Goes on to define what unauthorized paramilitary activity is. Publicly patrol, drill, or engage in techniques capable of causing injury or bodily death. Well, my goodness, that sounds like a football team. Interfering with, interrupting, or attempting to interfere with government operations or government proceeding. Now, I will say this. A lot of y'all probably aren't going to like what I'm about to say here, but I'm going to say it anyways. I think the biggest mistake that Donald Trump made was January 6th. And I'm not going to lie about that. And I'll tell you why. Um, everyone has a constitutional right to assembly. They have a constitutional right um, to even um, meet
Here's a disturbing
and do what
truth.
they want.
Millions of Americans who are
I'm
legally
sorry, I'm
allowed
trying
to
to do
carry a
something
gun
else.
don't because they don't
There's
have a
three of y'all
comfortable.
watching. I apologize. But everyone, I'm trying to get this set up so I can see the live chat if any of you guys post something. So be patient with me because I would like to go into that. Oh, it does show. It's showing me talking to myself. I'm confused. Okay, but we do have people watching, so let me just do this the right way, and we'll figure out live chat later. All right. So what I want to say though is I think January 6th was the biggest blunder because it played into everybody's hands. But here's the thing: there is an argument to be made here. The District of Columbia, where our federal government resides, there's a reason it is in D.C. It's not in Virginia. It's not in Maryland. Okay? The idea was that you had a place where the local state could not interfere with the government proceedings. For example, and this kind of happened in the Civil War, even though there was a D.C. But let's say the capital was in Virginia. And Virginia didn't like that Congress was about to go pass a law that Virginia would not like. Right? Well, what could Virginia do? Oh, you know what? We're shutting down the highway. Oh, you know what? We're declaring this area a disaster zone. You guys got to get out there. You see what I'm saying? You could even go so far as that state could trump up charges and arrest congressmen and senators that might vote in a way that they don't like, so that they could not. So the wisdom was create this District of Columbia, that is not going to be in any state, right? And when we're meeting, we have our own area, right? Just like you might meet in an area, we own it, we control it, we can't be interfered with. January 6th, the problem I have is that if that protest would have been on January 5th, or if it would have been on January 7th, I don't think there would have been a problem. If it would have been on January 6th in any other location but the District of Columbia, you could have had it on the Potomac in Virginia, you could have had it up in Maryland, you could have it, anywhere you wanted. I'm not that familiar with the geography around there. But you could have had it any other location, but you put it in the time and the place. And the purpose of the protest was protesting the election results that were going to be certified. Look, I'll tell you straight up, I can't prove it. I've seen all the videos, just like you guys have. I've heard all the arguments. Do I think that there was cheating? Absolutely. There's cheating in every election. Do I think there was enough to sway the vote? I'm suspicious that there probably was. Okay? So I understand why people were upset. I was upset. I thought the mail-in votes were ridiculous. I saw states like Pennsylvania go against their own constitution. And I think the mail-in voting system is just asking for voter fraud. Absolutely. So do I think people took advantage of it? Absolutely. I can't imagine them not taking advantage of it. I was upset as everyone else. I also understand sometimes you don't get the result you want. I also understand sometimes that people commit crimes against you, people steal something from you, and you know dang well who took your bike, right? You know dang well who stole something out of your yard. But the police can't do anything because they can't prove it. And sometimes that proof comes later, sometimes it comes never, and you just got to get over it. But whatever it is, I understand that too. Regardless, on the day that they're certifying it, which honestly is a administrative function. We can argue all day about the Electoral College and everything. But at the end of the day, The election was over. The states had all certified their votes and sent their electors. And you can Google that. That's a weird, complicated process, too. But Congress's job that day was not to decide the election. Congress's job that day was to simply certify, perform an administrative function which would actually certify it. And so what I would compare it to is like if some guy finds out his ex-girlfriend is getting married and look, it's over, man. You ain't getting her back, but you find out she's getting married at this venue on this day and you decide you want to go out there and throw a fit. Well, you might have a right to be there, but you're going to get probably punched by her dad and arrested by the police and dragged out of there, right? And you might even get charged with a more serious crime of some harassment or stalking or something like that, depending on what else you've done prior to or before, because you can't just sit there and innocently say, oh, I just happen to be here and I just happen to get upset about this issue at this moment. No, this just happened to be the day that she was formalizing, right, her, legal, whatever, religious, agreement here to be married to this person. You can't do, you aren't going to get away with that. You aren't fooling anybody. And I know that there's a lot of people that went to January 6th without that intention. But I know there's a lot of people that did. Okay? And I think they were. Um, I know there's provocateurs in her group. I can't imagine that there weren't provocateurs. I can't imagine that this FBI, that this justice system that we have, that the Democratic politicians that we have, did not see this and see nothing but opportunity. That's why I didn't understand it. And I saw Trump and I saw his post on Parler. I saw his post online. I saw the people coordinating convoys. I read what they were saying. I read what they were expecting. And Trump did nothing to tamp down those expectations. People went there with the idea that whether they were just going to stand out there and wave a flag or show up with zip ties and combat outfits and take over the Capitol, that whatever it is, that them being there was going to change the outcome of certifying the election that day and making Biden president. Let's be honest, at the end of the day, that's why people put gas in their vehicles, took time off of work, booked hotel rooms, and went up there and stood in the cold. And Trump led them to believe that that's what's going to happen. I think there's a lot of great things about what Trump did. I think there's a lot of great things about his presidency. Obviously, I'm not voting for Biden. I am supporting Trump in 2024. But I think that will go down as a blunder. We all have them. Me, everyone has them but Jesus. Okay? Everyone has a blunder. And that was a very costly one. A lot of people are under endless investigation for doing things that really did not commit any real crimes on that day. There's some people that, are being over prosecuted. There's a lot of people wrapped up in the web, and I guess, if your goal in life is to become a political prisoner, a martyr, then January 6th was the place for you to be that day. But if you're trying to actually, live, if you want to be out here on the street in 2024, those people serving 18, 20-year sentences, they can't do anything. They don't have a vote. They don't have a voice. The government took it away. Fair or unfair, that's the reality of it. So I think January 26th was a huge response, and this legislation here is a direct response to that blunder. And that's where I really kind of get, upset again at the whole thing, because it never should have ever happened. All right, end of my rant there. So let's get back to um, this legislation here. So let me get back to here. Da, 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 da. So as you can see, they're trying to define paramilitary activity. There are some exceptions, but it's basically if you're in the armed services, if you're doing a historical reenactment, I guess if you get your muskets out, They're also doing it here for students in an educational institution authorized by the federal government or state to teach military science, blah, blah, blah. Again, military. Members of an organization authorized under federal or state law to provide paramilitary law enforcement or security services training under the direction and control of the government authority. So, again, penalty. So it's a misdemeanor, a federal misdemeanor. You can't be in prison for more than a year, except that if the violation that does not result in bodily injury is committed by a person who has not, prior to the commission of the violation, been convicted before. In the case that a prior conviction under this section becomes final, the person shall be fined under this title in prison for not more than 2 years or both. If there's damage to property, you can be in prison for more than 2 years. In the case of a violation that results in bodily injury, you can be in prison for 5 years. If there's a death that results, you can be fined under this for any term of years or life. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Not even, an abuse of it. That means Kyle Rittenhouse gets acquitted for murder, but they determined that he was part of a military. He goes to federal prison for life. A jury of his peers sit there through that trial and say, that man did not commit murder. He was out there self-defense. Here comes the feds, which I think they're already trying to do, or they have tried to do, or they walked away from it. I don't know. But I know I heard something about it. But either way, if this bill passes, somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse could end up doing life in prison on the federal side, even though a jury of his peers found him not guilty of murder. Why? Because he was involved in paramilitary activity that resulted in death of another. Doesn't say the death has to be justified or not. So, all right, I'm not going to bore you guys with going into this bill. We've already 40 minutes in. I apologize for technical displays. I thank you guys who are viewing this now and who will view it in the future. I'm going to see if I can see here on anything on the live chat. I still need to educate myself on this, and I'd like to see if anybody has any questions. I am on Twitter Spaces right now, simulcasting. I don't see anything, but please leave comments. Please subscribe. I'm going to try to broadcast every day on the 6s, 6 a.m., 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. Let me see here. Let me see how. There should be a way to look. Recording in progress. Okay, let me look. I don't see anything in the I don't see anything in the live chat. Is there a way I can break this out? I don't see any comments yet. There's only one of you watching. I guess I ran two of y'all away when I started talking about January 6th and Trump, which is fine. I don't care. Oh, here we go. Pop out chat. There we go. All right, my one viewer, two of you watching. All right, now I can see your chat. So, look, if you guys want to talk, we can hold the phone up. We can, you could go on Twitter Spaces if you want to type in a comment. Please use the live chat. Send me something. I'm not asking you guys for money or trying to sell anybody anything right now. But I'm going to hang out here for about another 20 minutes. And then, like I said, I'm going to go catch Tim Pool's show. But I want you guys to be aware of this bill. This bill is right now, it's been submitted. It is now in the House Judiciary Committee. There are some good people on that committee. I'm hoping it will die there. But this is a scary, scary bill. And mind you, we're talking about how we can reasonably foresee the way that this bill could be enforced, the way it's written. We're not talking about the way it can be abused and twisted around, as we know that they would like to do. So let me see here. Who is on the House Judiciary Committee? All All right, here we go. House Judiciary Committee. Let me switch over here. House Judiciary Committee, we have the chairman is Jim Jordan, ranking member Jerry Nadler. Blech. So on the Republican side, we got some good guys. We got Matt Gaetz, who I think is one of the greatest, one of the most, uh, he's one of the best representatives I think we got. Thomas Massey, again, with the Freedom Caucus. Chip Roy, I'm not real familiar with, but I know he's taken a big stand with this Texas border crisis thing lately. Um, Wesley Hunt from Texas. That name looks familiar. I think I may have been at a rally that he was at back in 2020. But if you look, we definitely got more Republican members than Democratic members. Um, I hope to God that this bill dies in the committee because this is this thing is horrible. These guys are going to have your local football team declared a paramilitary organization if they get a chance. You know, they'll have you and your friends that play pickup basketball declared a paramilitary organization. I mean, if you guys want to go back into it, we can. But, you know, you start looking at how they define the type of activities. I think we kind of went over it, but, you know, preemption here. Um, oh, this is great. Any property subject to forfeiture pursuant to Section 2742 may be forfeited to the United States in a civil case in accordance. So even if they can't prove that you did this in a criminal court, they're still going to take you under civil forfeiture. I just think this bill is horrible. Okay, there's other stuff, and this is the section we kind of skipped, the offense. So we kind of stopped here at training to engage in any activity as described by paragraphs 1 through 4. So this is where I think the real abuse also comes in. Can you imagine how they can interpret this to say that what you were doing, you were training to engage? You don't have to do any of this stuff. You don't have to publicly patrol. You don't have to drill. You don't have to engage in techniques capable of causing bodily injury or death. You don't have to interfere with a government operation or proceeding. You don't have to interfere with or intimidate another person's exercise of their constitutional right. You don't actually have to assume the functions of law enforcement, impersonate police officer. Okay? All you have to get caught doing is training to engage in any activity. Now we went back to the penalties where if you violate this and there's a death. So if you and your 4 buddies are out, you know, in the woods drilling or at a, you know, this is the one thing I've said, heck, this could be a this could be a gun range. You could be at the gun range with 2 other guys, which most of the time when I'm at the gun range there's at least 2 other people. And somebody walks out in front of the range when it's hot, gets shot, dies. This law could be used to put you in federal prison the rest of your life. Well, you're training to. We believe you're training to assume the functions of law enforcement. We believe you guys were training to engage in techniques capable of bodily injury or death. Now, to some guy in the South, you may say going to the gun range, that's just getting ready for hunting season. That's just a hobby. Yeah, well, tell that to a guy from Massachusetts. Tell that to these you know, liberals that cry when they see a gun, if it's anywhere but a movie, right? They see people at the gun range. They say, "Why are you guys out there shooting all these holes in paper?" Right? They don't have that. That culture is long gone from them. They've lost it. They don't understand marksmanship. So to them, there's only one reason you could be out there shooting holes in paper targets, right? And so now that law applies. You could just be out of range, gun range, when somebody gets injured. I'm telling you, did we ever think that that a lot of stuff we've seen in the last 20 in the last 3 or 4 years since 2020 be construed this way? Well, let me ask you this. Where's the law that says you can't join Antifa or BLM and go terrorize. Isn't that depriving me of my constitutional rights? I can't leave my house because you guys are blocking the streets. I can't safely go outside of my yard because y'all are walking down and y'all are gonna come and attack me. Let's not even get to my constitutional right to free speech. I can't go out there and say I support Trump. What do you think would happen? You got BLM and Antifa walking down your block. Do you think you can safely get out there and say something like that? No, you can't. You would be assaulted. You'd be done. Would that be interfering with your constitutional right? Do you think this law is going to be used against them? They could meet all the elements of this law. I highly doubt it. And if you trust our federal government to do so, then you're a fool. If you think they're going to apply this law evenly after what we've seen, they're not going to. And again, I harp on this, but this is why the federal government was meant to be so limited in the first place. You know what? If things are so bad that your local government needs to pass some law like this, if there's marauding groups of paramilitary people running around out there and trying to cause chaos and deprive people of constitutional rights and there's dead bodies in the street, well, that's fine. Make your state pass a law. And then when they charge you with it, you're going to be held in your local courthouse. And then the people that are going to convict you are going to have to be a jury of your peers from your community. And even then, it's a crappy process and can be abused. But let me tell you, that's way better than what you're going to get in the federal system and application through the federal law. It's like a removal. It's no longer what would I say? It's no longer local. These laws are meant to be local. The federal government was meant to do very specific things that state governments could not do. Mostly dealing with other nations, enforcing borders, which we see they have no interest in that, international borders, okay, and dealing with disputes between states. It was never meant to be a replacement for the monarch. It was never meant to be the ultimate authority in this country. The ultimate authority was supposed to be the people. And on the most practical level, that would be your state, local, county governments. Here we are. We've allowed the federal government to engorge itself to become so large, it's a monarch that we just change out every 4 years. And that brings me to another point of why I'm not optimistic that any of this crap gets fixed, no matter who wins. Obviously, I'm not supporting Biden, okay? But I don't think it matters. We get a good president in for 4 years, okay, wonderful. What about the 4 years after that? It's just going to go back and forth, back and forth. I think it's broke. I think we have to get back. I think we have to support representatives, and I think it's very important that when we contact our representatives, which you should, and let them know how you feel about this legislation, it matters. Send emails, make phone calls. Don't just do it on the basis of, I don't like it. This is because that's what they hear. They hear stuff on their pet project. There's a bill about, spotted barn owls or whatever, and the bird watchers start emailing them and flood them. Oh, I think you should pass this bill because it's going to protect the birds. Oh, I don't think you should pass this bill because the spotted barn owl eats these little songbirds that I like to have, and it would, That's all these people hear about. You need to contact these people and tell them that you disagree with this because this is unconstitutional, this is overstepped by the federal government, and at some point you have to push back and we have to shrink the federal government. We have to. Or they're going to keep pushing and keep doing stuff like this, and then we are all subjects. We are not citizens. And if you don't know the difference between being a subject of a king and being a citizen of a republic, then you got to go back and read your history. And you got to go back and find what led up to the Revolutionary War and what the issues were and where this all came down to. We all have a responsibility to think of ourselves that way. So, anyways, that's my ranting. I just want to get this out there. I wasn't going to go live tonight at first. When I woke up this morning, I don't see any chats. All right, that's good. Well, it's not good, but I accept it. Um, Thank you for those of you who watched tonight. I will be back at 6 a.m. I'll be looking for any news on the border to share with you guys and cover bright and early at 6 a.m. Thank you guys for tuning in to Uncle Jonathan. Please don't forget to subscribe if you like it. Thank you for this kind of a rough, raw stream of consciousness show. It's gonna be. I'm definitely fired up tonight, a lot more than I was this morning when I was still waking up with my coffee. So I think you're going to see kind of two different guys here. One guy in the morning, one guy in the evening. But I really appreciate you guys. Please follow me on Twitter. Please, send questions. I want feedback. I don't just want to be sitting here ranting all the time. I really want this to be a show where there's a lot of input from you guys. There's a lot of messages, questions, comments, stuff like that, which is why I went out to the Twitter spaces. So I'm actually going to listen to the sound quality on this, but Rumble is my primary means of communication. So I hope you guys enjoy. God bless. Good night. And I'll see y'all tomorrow at 6 a.m.